This week on the Hollywood and Toto podcast, our late-night friends sink to a new low. But we all saw it coming, let's be honest. We talk with author and pundit Kurt Schlichter about his rip-roaring new book, OVERLORD, and how he's been gaming the Amazon system with the whole series. Pretty cool. And we share a depressing word from the musician behind Five for Fighting about the latest terrorist attacks from Hamas and the creative community's reaction to them.
Welcome to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Before we start, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. We've got new episodes each Wednesday, plus more bonus episodes are on the way. They're coming in hot. The terror attacks in Israel are almost too shocking to process. Every new detail is just more sickening than the last. And you've read all about them before, so I'm not going to rehash them here. But I will share a silent prediction I made at the beginning of the week related to the late night crew. I said, I bet you before the first monologue joke of the week, Colbert and company are going to use these attacks to slam President Donald Trump. Now, where do I go collect my prize? Now, to be fair, John Oliver and Jimmy Fallon ignored the atrocities completely. Oliver was laser focused on his rage against homeschooling. Bad, bad, bad. Well, Fallon just prattled on about Taylor Swift again. Come on, give me those Johnny Carson numbers of old, please, just once. Sorry, Jimmy. Now, the other Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert, well, they did exactly as I predicted. I couldn't have scripted it any more accurately. Colbert started with some generic comments about the horrors committed by Hamas. He didn't use the T word, terrorist. Oh, you can't use that word. Hey, we all know why. But he said there's no way a late-night show can make any kind of joke about the situation. And, of course, he's right. And then he cherry-picked some comments that Trump made shortly after the attacks. One of his big speeches, you know how they go rambling on, to make fun of the former president, as if he didn't take the attack seriously. Really? Jon Stewart's legacy of cherry-picking stuff to make people look bad, well, it's alive and well. And Stephen Colbert is here to carry that baton and run as fast as he can. Now, Kimmel, well, he was, I would say, just as bad.
Some horrific news over the weekend. Our friends and allies in Israel, innocent civilians killed and kidnapped by the terrorist organization Hamas. Israel is now at war. It's a nightmarish situation. Leaders from all around the world condemned the attack, as did millions of Americans, including our super-duper pro-Israel former President Donald Trump, who immediately found a way to make it about himself. He wrote, "The horrible attack on Israel, much like the attack on Ukraine, would never have happened if I were president. Zero chance." That's right. If he was president, we'd all be blissfully downing jiggers of bleach. There'd be no war anywhere. And then, because he was so upset about this tragedy, he posted a photo of himself from back when he and his waistline were still in their 40s, playing tennis. There's Subpoena Williams right there. Can you imagine?
What would these clowns do if Trump didn't exist? What would they say? Would they just stare at the teleprompter? Would they just wave their hands around? I don't know. It's their whole existence at this point. What about President Joe Biden? You know the guy. He's the commander-in-chief. No joke. He took forever to spit out a comment or two about the atrocities, and then the very next day he threw a barbecue. Oh, that's what way to mourn, right? What way to show solidarity with one of our best allies. Of course, it took him 2 more days after that barbecue. Boy, that must have been a jamboree to address the nation and, of course, take no questions. That's the Biden way. I love seeing the pictures of his back on social media. That is just, what could better capture Joe Biden than the picture of his back walking away? Just disgraceful. But in his defense, would you want to answer questions like, hey, do you regret giving Iran, which helped pull off the attack, $6 billion a few weeks ago? That might make Joe squirm. We don't want Joe to squirm. He's our guy. He's our Uncle Joe. What about the fact that Americans were killed in those attacks and some are likely being held hostage? Think that might warrant a question and answer? And why is the world collapsing around Joe Biden right now? Yet the late-night comedians just can't spare a joke at his expense. Nah, not one. It is infuriating. And I have to say, for my liberal friends out there, how many Trump jokes do you really need at this point? Do you need a few more? Do you have to have them night after night, day after day, week after week? Isn't it about time you shut these clowns off? Don't we deserve better than this? You do. You know, I've come to accept their biases. Okay, they're liberal. They lean to the left. Great. And the fact that they're willing to sink their own credibility again and again, I get that. I accept that. They're getting big paychecks. I understand. But this is beneath even them. One of my favorite phrases as a writer is sharp elbows. An example, actor Nick Searcy from Justified. He throws a lot of sharp elbows on Twitter. So does former Hitcast guest John Nolte, especially from Breitbart News. Oh, sharp and painful. This week's guest is Kurt Schlichter. He throws sharp smart bombs. Now, Kurt's a trial lawyer and a retired Army infantry colonel. He writes blistering op-eds for townhall.com, and of course he's ferocious on Twitter, as is our other friends we just mentioned. Kurt's other side hustle? He's the mind behind the Kelly Turnbull series. Just think about an Arnold Schwarzenegger-style 80s movie compressed into a book form. The Kurt's latest adventure, and this is the 8th in the series, it's called Overlord, and it's more of the same from Kurt. Smart, droll, and dripping with funny exchanges that remind you of his other gig. Yeah, he's a stand-up comic. When does this guy sleep? The series is not only pure adrenaline, no fat, all meat. It's got some great satirical swipes at Western culture, the political scene, and I have to say, as good as they are, and as funny as they are, they're becoming a little bit too accurate for my tastes. It's getting scary. We talk about that in our conversation coming up. Now, this time, Kelly Turnbull is touching down in New Orleans, London, West Africa. And before the smoke clears, you know he's going to do some damage. It's just what he does. And you know what? If you hate the woke mind virus as much as me, and I loathe it, well, you can't get your hands on Overlord fast enough. You got to trust me on this one. Here's my chat with Colonel Sharp Elbows, Kurt Schlichter. Kurt, welcome back to the show. Now, this is your 8th book in the Kelly Turnbull series. Now, when you're an author, you never know how the audience is going to react to it. You could be one and done. But when you get to this point in a franchise, is there a sense of freedom you have, things you maybe were thinking about but didn't get a chance to do? How did that come into play with the new book?
Well, it's one of the things I wanted to do, one of the reasons I started doing these books is because I was kind of unsatisfied with the quality of a lot of stuff out there. It wasn't really speaking to me. And, there are some very popular authors out there in kind of the action adventure genre who, you pick up their book and it's the same book, as the last year. Mm-hmm. And there are guys who are taking interesting directions. Matt Bentley does, Jack Carr does, but, I like a fun book I can get on an airplane in LA. And when I land in Washington, D.C., I don't realize I spent 5 hours.
Yeah. Perfect escapism. That's what it's all about, really.
But yeah. And but I also want to send a message about conservatism. So I wanted to add all that stuff in. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very cognizant that I want to give the reader something that's not garbage. And there's a lot of garbage out there. Yeah. Like yesterday, I was watching The Old Man on FX. I don't know if you've seen that. It's got
Jeff Bridges.
Don't. Because it comes to a flying stop and all they do is talk about their feelings. And there's another show on Amazon or Hulu or something called Invasion. And there's alien invaders. Sounds interesting, huh? No. It's all people talking about, I could have been a doctor, but instead I chose to be a mom. And my rule with Kelly Turnbull is all good parts.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like I never understood filler on an album. I want to do London Calling every single time.
And also, I think a lot of these shows today, there's so many episodes. I think you can actually feel it when you have the filler episode, like they're just spinning their wheels. And who wants that?
Nobody. I've been rewatching Justified.
Oh, it's so good.
It is so good. Everybody's so good. It's so well written, and there's not a lot of fluff. I gotta tell you, man, I'm not interested in the character's relationship with his teenage daughter, which I think was the problem of the new Justified. The first 3 episodes were all him dealing with his teenage daughter. There's nothing more boring. What man wants to watch a show about a guy who's like a gunslinger, and he doesn't sling guns? Instead, he basically gets crap from his bratty teenage daughter and takes it. I mean, what are you guys thinking? And I'm guessing these writer rooms, are filled with people who think that's interesting, and it isn't interesting. I try and make Kelly Turnbull, if you're not laughing or going, wow, that's so cool, or you're going, oh, what an interesting insight into how Blue America would be without any constraints. I want everything to be a good part. And I really write like that. And of course, my writing is very informed by being a kid of the 70s and 80s who, on Channel 2 every Sunday, they'd have like these great movies. 5 o'clock movie on Channel 2, The Bridge Over River Kwai, Guns of Navarone, The Dirty Dozen, which I watched again this weekend, and holy cow, does it hold up. Just these great, books about serious adults, but they're not necessarily grim. They're just exciting and entertaining. And if you read through my thing, you're obviously going to find where I pay tributes to everything from Escape from New York to Where Eagles Dare. In this one, there's some Die Hard stuff. It's just, I want to be fun. And that was what Andrew Breitbart really said. Everybody says, well, he says politics is downstream from culture. Sure it is. But what's the culture? The culture is good. You've got to make good stuff. You can't just say, that's why I object to people go, well, this is a Christian movie. No, make a movie and then talk about what you want. Because any movie can be good. You can have a movie about a restaurant that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Right. You never saw it coming.
A friend of mine
fascinating.
Gave me a tip on it. It was called, I think, Dinner Rush with Danny Aiello. It's an excellent movie set in a restaurant and all sort of the hustle and bustle behind the scenes. It was very good. By the way, you mentioned having it to be fun.
Yes.
The dialogue is always enjoyable in your books, but there are some exchanges in Overlord where you've got these woke characters and you got Kelly interacting with them and trying to pass as if he's one of them. It's just brilliant. Can you talk about those? I mean, these are satirical asides. This is good stuff. This is funny, but it has that ring of authenticity which makes it all work. Break down those elements a bit, because that's. If you like nothing else in the book, that's just amazing. I mean, even if you don't like action, which is obviously chock-a-block in your stories, but you'd want to hang around just for those moments alone.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things when I wrote People's Republic, Red America and Blue America, they've split apart, and Kelly Turnbull goes into Blue America and has adventures. That's generally how the books go. But the Blue America talks like Blue America. There are, pronouns, the whole thing, but it's, enforced by law, and it's relentless. And some people have said, it just keeps coming. It never stops. And I'm like, yeah, but that's the not funny point about how this crushes your spirit. And you look at these blue characters and they're just reciting this stuff, and most of them are just emotionally crushed or crazy, or using it for their own power.
Or mean. They're downright mean, too. I think that's one of the things that you capture so effortlessly, is that these are nasty people who are looking to do some nasty things. And they're not trying to make the world a better place.
No, they're using using wokeness as a weapon in many cases. And there are other people using it to survive. And there are other people, occasionally meet someone who's just had enough. and it usually ends badly for them because the ultimate crime is to reject the woke regime. And so there's a seriousness. I mean, a lot of this stuff's funny, and you look at it, it's ridiculous. But imagine you had to live in a place where you could literally go to jail for committing, a pronoun crime. Now, understand that is, not a step into insanity, because you go on a college campus and you can have your entire career destroyed because you call a man who is manifestly a man when he decides he wants to be a woman, or a Z or a Zer. And I don't, and being expelled from the college you've got put 3 years into, the next step is being put into jail.
I think in a way, you look at your books, the arc of your books, it's almost like real life is catching up to your satire, and it's becoming almost indistinguishable.
Yes.
Does that make it that line between satire and reality, and pushing the envelope and not too far? Is that getting harder for you as you write as the new installments come out?
I've definitely thought, my gosh, 4 years ago, if I had written this, I had said I was crazy. Now they're going to say I'm a squish because I'm only figuring it out now. No, but the original People's Republic, I got people going, I liked it, but it just seemed a little over the top. And I mean, you look at the reviews, yeah, it's a good book, a little over the top. And then the more recent reviews are, holy crap, Kurt got it. And I'm not happy about it.
Yeah.
I got attacked by the sexually dysfunctional idiots at the Bulwark. Naturally, they called my book racist, which is interesting. My challenge to them is, what color is Kelly Turnbull?
We don't know.
Does it matter?
Yeah.
Why couldn't Idris Elba be him? Or, but they're idiots. But they were, they were attacking it because I was aggressively making a case they were afraid to.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, they kind of said, well, Kurt wants violence. Kurt wants a civil war. I've actually served in the ruins of a civil war. Unlike these, femboys.
Well, to be fair, attacking this book series is very much on brand for Bulwark, so I just can't blame them for that.
Well, I use Bill Crystal blurb at the back. Appalling.
Uh-huh. One of the things your books often do is touch on or overlap real life. There's a political leader on trial early in the book. When you have those moments, I guess the devil's was it devil's advocate? I'm misusing the phrase here, but you could say, well, you're making your book of the moment, and if you read it 10 years from now, it won't get. But obviously, there's a method to your madness. Talk about where you have these overlapping elements. Or, I just read about that, or that's from last year, or that's the storyteller.
I want to talk about what's going on. I also don't want to be a cheerleader for bad choices. Mm-hmm. If there's a red and a blue America. Red is not a paradise. Okay, red America is half as the United States ripped in half, mm-hmm. and it changes us. And there are some things that are cool about it, and that we'd all cheer, and some things that aren't. Plus, human nature. You talk about the trial. Yeah, there is a character on trial. Is this guy a good guy? Not just because you're a red guy doesn't mean human nature's been repealed. Mm-hmm. There are bad people who speak like we do. And I don't want to insult the reader by doing things in black and white. And even Kelly Turnbull's not in black and white. Sometimes he does some very nasty things. And sometimes they're pretty shocking. But there's a reason he does it. And, you read the books, you understand, here's how he's been burned before. Here's why maybe he's a little harsher than, people who haven't had their friends splattered all over them are.
And I think a lot of times we relate to those flawed heroes. Even James Bond has never been a saint. Yeah. I mean, they're trying to make him into a saint now, but he's never been,
that's just
the soft and cuddly type. And he's often discarded women, and that's just James Bond. That's the guy that we see on the screen. He's not a role model. And I think that we often, I think that writers today often fall into that trap. Well, we can't emulate these characteristics because then other people.
Well, everybody's got to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, and they have to be perfect now, right? You look at James Bond fighting communists 60 years ago, and that was awesome. But now, oh, well, I've got this list of reasons he wouldn't work out in 2023. Well, he wasn't from 2020.
That's right.
And also, I got a newsflash: 2023 ain't so freaking great. You know, I'm looking around here and I'm like, okay, this society is going to teach me moral lessons. Why don't I go back in time to Caligula, get his freaking input?
Get a scratch
You know?
out. He's got some things to share.
Exactly. I want to take some notes there, Callie.
You know, you were, a trial lawyer. You've served. You have all these different background experiences.
Yes.
You weren't a novelist until you made yourself a novelist, and now you're a successful one. But I want to talk a little bit about sort of the mechanics of that. Not obviously you know how to tell a story. You're a funny guy. You know how to make the banter pop from the page. But talk about how you make this possible with Amazon, being a solopreneur in a sense, because I think there are other people who are itching to tell their stories, and they may have great stories to tell, but they don't know how to do it. How do you get there? Is there anything you could share about that?
Well, yeah. First of all, I've been writing since college, so the mid 80s. And I wrote novels that never went anywhere. I'm part of the Ray Bradbury school. You have to write 1 million words before you get all the crap out. Well, by the time Kelly Turnbull came around in 2016, I think I was ready to do that. Now, I published 1, maybe 2 other books before that, traditionally. And they were nonfiction or semi-nonfiction. Because I'd always have fictional elements in it. I always thought fiction was I think fiction's a great tool to talk about nonfiction. Mm-hmm. And the traditional publishing process, and I've got literally the best agent in the business. I mean, he's the best one. And it's still a pain in the butt. And you write something and it's 9 months before it comes out, and a bunch of other people have input into it. And they also get the chance to tell you yes or no. The beauty of Amazon, I don't think it's self-publishing, because Amazon actually does the publishing. They create it, they distribute it. I simply write it and put it into format and give it to them. It's very easy. It's totally democratized the market. The publishing industry is the worst industry in the world. I don't understand it. Apparently, Christian, apparently all these guys do is go to lunch. I mean, I really don't get it. And a lot of books don't work, and a few work really well. And I'm not sure how the money works. I do know how the Amazon money works. I sell a book, I get X% of the cover price, and it gets sent to me 2 months later. And there's never any question. And it's a very good rate. I'm not going to tell you exactly how much I've made off of these. I made a lot because I've sold a lot. Mm-hmm. And it is a huge opportunity. Am I talented enough to be a traditionally published novelist? Yeah. Will I be? Doubtful. It's, because you have to pass a bunch of gatekeepers. And if I throw Kelly Turnbull out there, they're just going to go, well, we're not going to do that. I mean, I got grief on my nonfiction books. I had one editor call me up. Well, the New York Times called me and said you were saying mean things about women. And this is like a conservative imprint. And I'm thinking, well, you told him to kiss your ass, right? No, I took it very serious. I'm in New York. So this is a huge opportunity for us to get our stuff, to eliminate the distribution problem. Content is a separate problem. Distribution's a huge problem. And look, we always talk about conservative media. Where are all the conservative writers and artists? They're out there. The problem is they can't get distribution. People are like, well, you ought to make Kelly Turnbull in a series. Great. Where do I get $40 million? And then once I do that, who's going to put it up? Is Hulu going to do it?
Yeah, it's impossible.
Is Amazon?
And Kelly can't be told in a indie budget story. It just doesn't work.
No, and I'm not interested in doing that. So, look, the content is fine, and I think it would be very successful, especially if you didn't try and stretch out each book. Each book could be a season, but if you don't stretch out the season to 13 and instead did maybe 6. Mm-hmm. don't pad them out. But, a lot of visuals, a lot of characters, a lot of action. Yeah, it could be expensive, but it's also got this conservative weight around its neck, a millstone, if you will, dragging you down to the bottom of the ocean. The guys at Amazon, I know people who work at these places. They're like, Kurt, they'd never buy it, though it would be a hit. I mean, it'd certainly be better than Talk About Your Feelings Part 5.
Well, listen, I think Hollywood is great at leaving money on the table, so you'd be just part of that process. But you don't need it.
We've learned over the last 10 or 15 years. We used to think as soon as Hollywood figures out there's money on the table, they'll be all over it.
Nope.
People are not solely motivated by money.
Yeah.
They are motivated by, social factors. The other problem is niche. You remember Johnny Carson would get 40 million viewers a night. Everyone watched Johnny Carson. Now you've got 10 of these guys all being paid what Johnny Carson is. They're getting 3 or 4 shares to Johnny's 40 share. You can be successful in a very narrow niche. So you don't have to actually appeal. You can leave money on the table and still make a bunch of money. And that's what they do.
Yeah. Now, I think you mentioned in 2016 you started the Kelly Turnbull series. Is that correct?
Yes.
Back then, conservative art sounded like an oxymoron. It just didn't work. And now we've had, Daily Wire's going Hollywood. I think Glenn Beck is really talking about serious movie making. Try That in a Small Town is a huge hit. We've seen all these different examples, maybe isolated for sure, but do you sense there's a cultural change afoot? And, you got people on YouTube who can put out a comedy special without all the gatekeepers. What's going on?
The distribution. It's democratizing. We've democratized books. That's why mine are out there. Dude, I got to 29 on all of Amazon. Amazon has 8 million books. Mine was number 29. I wrote it in my bedroom. I posted it to Amazon from my bedroom. That is the democratization of distribution. When that goes to visual products in a big way, it redefines everything. And I think the writer's strike kind of recognized, it kind of does and doesn't recognize the changes that are coming. I think a lot of the ways the writers are desperate to maintain the old school. Like, for instance, and I haven't read what the actual deal is, but they were arguing for minimum numbers of writers in writers' rooms. That's an old school, inflexible kind of thing. You lock the studios into that. That's just it's not going to work, and the studios aren't going to work. You see unbundling. ESPN is about to try and go online, as I understand it. When that happens, the whole cable thing falls apart.
Yeah, I think we're going to see that within months, maybe years. It could even be months. I mean, it's just things are changing so rapidly. And you're right. Yeah. And by the way, they're going to hire 8 writers. 6 of them will have nothing to do, but they'll be on the payroll, and then 2 people will actually write the episodes because that's
exactly. It's the old school union feather bedding.
Well,
and the thing is, guys like us, I'm not going to be in the WGA. I don't need to work for these guys. What do I need? Some guy in a suit with an MBA giving me notes on Kelly Turnbull? Yeah, that's not in the cards unless you hand me you back up a truck with money with the beeping. Then you buy it, it's yours. But they're just not going to do that. So we have an underserved audience. We have the artists. I mean, for God's sake, look at the guy who does my covers, Sean Salter, Salty Hollywood. Just unbelievable talent out there.
They're great. They're very striking. I notice that every time.
They're so good. And we're talking about graphic novel stuff to kind of take in a new direction, maybe even animated. The thing is, I love that we don't have to ask permission. I don't have to ask anybody's permission to write my books the way I want to. The only permission I need is from my audience.
And they keep giving it to you, so that's what works.
They do.
It's funny, you mentioned about the distribution channels and the democratization of it. I think this leads into my last question, because I think that's why we're seeing a rise in censorship right now, because I think the powers that be are so deathly afraid. But I have to say, I always like to end my interviews on a slightly positive note, and I can think of very few positive notes about this censorship wave right now. There was a recent poll that said that half of Democrats think this, and hate speech is a terrible thing, and it sounds bad. But you're a smart guy, and you've got a sense of things that I don't. Can you point to something positive? I mean, just the existence of your novel series is a small but important note that is positive, because you're not being held back by the gatekeepers. But it just seems, from a cultural point of view, we're losing something precious. Am I missing some fountains of optimism that you can share?
Well, look, I think my optimism. First of all, I'm always optimistic. I am a child of Reagan's California in the 70s, and it never occurred to me I couldn't do exactly what I wanted to do, which I have. And I think, and that kills me about the Generation Z people, because they come up, they're raised to be told, you've got limits. You don't have limits, except for the ones you allow to be put on you. Go do your thing. Go write your novel. Now there's no excuse. You can't say, I couldn't get it published. You can get published. Get published tomorrow. Just takes a little more work to put in format. Here's the thing, Christian. Our enemies are unimpressive and unaccomplished. The people who own the institutions did not build them. They did not create them. They haven't defended them. They inherited them. Like cultural trust fund babies. Right? They went to the right schools, got the right credentials, so they get admitted, but they didn't build anything, and they don't appreciate them, and they'll destroy them.
They're pretty good at breaking them down, though. I will say that.
Yes, the Iowa Hawk, find an institution, gut it, wear its skin suit, and demand respect. Man, what a great insight, huh? That's one of the all-time top 10 tweets. It's so true. These guys. They get these institutions and they change their purpose, which changes their usefulness. So the major movie studios, as soon as they start going woke and start, hey, I know, let's have a girl power Star Wars. Well, then it starts going downhill. Yeah. And they destroy what they didn't build. It's like all third generation. Everybody knows, Henry Ford, mixed message kind of guy, but he started the 40-hour work week. He started the assembly line. The next generation of Fords, they brought us the Mustang. They made Ford an incredible industrial powerhouse. Name a third generation Ford.
It's EV. I know that.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, Kurt, I appreciate your wisdom and I appreciate your insights as well. And of course, check out the new book, Overlord, the 8th in the Kelly Turnbull series. You could jump in here, I think, fresh, but I think it's much better if you go check out some of the other novels. You'll get really up to speed on what the situation is. But you can find it all on Amazon. He is using that service, and everyone else can as well, so that's a great message. And of course, if you like action, if you like adventure, and if you like satirical shots at the woke, and they are chock-a-block in the new book, as always. And of course, you can read Kurt's columns at townhall.com. And to me, no one throws sharper elbows at people, at targets, at institutions than you do, but it's always done with humor and insight, so that's why it lands so well. Kurt, thank you so much, and great luck with the new book.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and keep doing the great work. It's, original Breitbart alum like us, I think we still have something to say.
We've got a secret handshake too, so we'll have to share that next time. Thanks again.
That's
Kurt.
right.
Some celebrities, bless their hearts, should let their art do the talking for them. A certain De Niro comes to mind. Oh my God. He's the worst interview in the world. His comments are just so poorly reasoned. And a great actor. I love him to death. He's just the best on screen. But hey, just not a good interview. Doesn't know what he's talking about. But the stars just aren't always up to speed on the latest issues. Or they've researched them very badly, using some really terrible news sources. And what comes out is gobbledygook. And I think I'm being kind. John Andrasik, well, he's an exception. Now, you probably know him best as Five for Fighting. That's his band name. Of course, you know the songs like 100 Years and Superman, It's Not Easy. Good stuff. John is smart, he's rational, and he's really well informed on the key issues of the day. He has done his homework, and he's done it well. Also, what happens is we chat once in a while on DM via Twitter, or X as it's now called. And John is definitely coming on the show in the coming weeks. Wait for that. I can't wait. But for now, I want to share his thoughts on the Hamas terrorists and his community's reaction to them. And by community, I mean his artistic community. Or, you may have guessed it, the lack of reaction to the terrorist attacks. Now, there were some people who did speak out a bit, Bono from U2, Natalie Portman, Jamie Lee Curtis, but boy, they were the exceptions. Most people didn't say a word, but let John have the last word here on the subject. With few exceptions, the deafening silence of Hollywood and the music industry in their refusal to condemn Hamas terrorist massacres, rapes, and child beheadings speaks to their moral cowardice and exposes the hypocrisy of their self-anointed human rights flag-bearer monopoly. Ouch. And they all earned it. Well, that's the show this week. Thank you to Radio America for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. And of course, while I'm bending your ear at this final moment, please check out HollywoodInToto.com. It's updated 7 days a week. It's got news, reviews, and commentary on the crazy hijinks that are happening in and around Hollywood. It is, of course, like this show, the right take on entertainment, and it's been woke-free since 2014. See you next time.